hit the button.
Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us for our third workshop in the Moving Forward series. My name is Mallory Newby, and I'm one of the assistant directors and career coaches at the University Career Center. And today I will also be watching for your questions in the Q&A section. So we want to invite you to ask away with any questions that you have on today's topic, online etiquette. And we'll be looking at those throughout today's session. So without further ado, let's meet today's presenter, Miss Rosie Shannon, who has a lot of great information to share with you as we all navigate this digital world we're now living in. So Rosie, take it away.
Thank you, Mallory. And yes, welcome. My name is Rosie Shannon. I'm an assistant director in the University Career Center. And I'm very glad to be here today and glad that you have joined us. I'm very passionate about this topic of online etiquette. And just a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are one of 4 career centers on campus. So we serve all students except those that are currently enrolled in the College of Business. They have the Ulmer Career Management Center. And if you are a student in the Speed School of Engineering, they have the Speed Co-op and Career Center as well. And then our law school also has career services for law students. So we serve primarily then all other students on campus in the University Career Center. We all work together and we all have similar programs and services, but it is best to visit your career center that houses your particular major because they have specific programs and relationships built with employers to best serve you and your career needs. And so my contact information is listed here on the PowerPoint. If you have any questions that aren't maybe addressed during the presentation, or you want to follow up with something that was said, or you have additional questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. My email is listed here on the PowerPoint. And so today, we are going to talk about this, again, online etiquette. And since we are now mostly communicating virtually these days, it is so important that we are making sure we are presenting ourselves professionally and creating positive impressions when using all communication platforms with all audiences that we are speaking with. So today we're going to focus on these 4 areas primarily. So we're going to talk about some email etiquette, some professional networking with LinkedIn etiquette. We're going to touch a little bit on social networking etiquette. And then also we're hearing that more and more interviews now, are, especially these days, are more online interviewing. So we're going to talk about some online interviewing tips as well. And so as you can see, again, we're all connecting with each other virtually, whether that's with our friends, coworkers, instructors, potential employers. It's just critical that we be aware of how we are coming across with our audience while we are communicating with them. And as you can see here, this information has been gathered to show us the impact and the number of people who are going digital on our planet. And again, this information was gathered, before the quarantine, and now that, we're all more in quarantine mode and stay at home. Again, we are, using so much digital communications now. So as you can see, just from these numbers, out of the 7.75 billion people on this planet, we have 67% of people that are using mobile phone devices, and almost 60% obviously used internet connections and internet forms of communicating through the internet. And then as you can see, almost half are on social media. So again, it's important to remember that all forms of our digital communications, your personality is being reflected to your audience. Be sure that your personality makes a positive impression at all times and in all communications that you send out. So we do feel it's an important topic. It's important to have these reminders, and just to be mindful of basic etiquette during in this digital age that we have become. So this is also, this internet etiquette is sometimes referred to as netiquette. Again, a set of behaviors that hopefully should be adhered to when using the internet. And it's just critical in our workspaces and in our personal relationships to remember that there is a person on the other end receiving your words, your thoughts, and your information. So I am going to start with some basic email etiquette tips. And this will focus primarily with potential employers and potential professionals who might be advocates for you in your job search or in your future. So reminders when communicating, and also some reminders when communicating with your instructors as well. And again, potential networking contacts. And as we all know, we are getting inundated with emails every day. I know that you as students are. I know that we are as staff. We know that employers are always getting lots of emails every day. And so we just really don't have a lot of time. There are some that, if that subject line doesn't really pop out at you, sometimes you don't read an email. So there are some key points here that we really want to stress as far as email tips and etiquette and that sort of thing. Keeping your email short, to the point. Obviously, just having a short introduction of who you are and why you're writing. I think it's important to start off with just a little bit of small talk, like, how are you doing? I hope this finds you well, especially like in these times right now that we're facing. I hope that this finds you and your family doing well, and then get into your message. And then always follow the end of that email with a short thank you and then your signature. And I'll get into these more specific in just a moment, and I'll show you an example of a short, quick email. Again, just try to be as clear and specific in your message as you can. I know, again, things can be misinterpreted and that sort of thing. So we just try to be as clear and concise as you can. Always, always, always proofread that email before you click the send button. Again, we're trying to create a professional overall impression. And so we just, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but really try to take some time before you click that send button and to proofread your email for any errors and to pay attention to the details. Obviously, address it to a person and include their name. And that's very important, instead of just starting your email off like, just without any kind of greeting or anything. You just go right into your message. You want to make sure, obviously, that you put their name in there. Hello, Rosie. Hi, Rosie, that sort of thing. And then always include a relevant subject line, kind of the why are you reaching out to me? So if you're sending an email to me and you want to try to schedule an appointment, you would just put maybe an appointment request in that subject line so that I kind of know the overall point of you sending me the email. And then always make sure that your email, that the email address that it's coming from, is an appropriate email and a professional email address as well. So it might just be, it could be coming from your school email, it might be coming from a personal email account, but again, just keep it very simple, whether that's like rshannon@twc.com, usually, just like a first initial, last name. And again, we just don't want to, again, these are all about creating positive impressions. They could be positive first impressions, but we want to make sure that every detail in that email, again, it's reflecting your personality, your character. And so we just want to make sure that everything is as positive and professional as it can be. So in a sample email, if I'm writing, as you can see here, I have a nice little greeting. Hi, Karen. Hope you're doing well during this pandemic. I go on and introduce myself. I'm a student here, and what is it that I'm reaching out for? So I'd like for her to review my resume. I'm applying for a position. Attached is my resume. I appreciate your help and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. And then I put my signature, my name, at the end of my email. And I'll talk more about that signature logo in just a minute. So again, it's just a real simple, we're using complete sentences. We're not using any abbreviations. We're using, again, I proofread it before you send it. I think it's important, again, to just keep it friendly, keep it simple, a little small talk at the beginning. Content is straightforward. Always conclude with a thank you. And again, these are some just basic common tips, but sometimes I know that we probably all have received maybe some not so well written emails at times. And again, it's important that you're making that positive first impression to your reader. Again, your personality is reflected in your email. So if you're too casual in tone, or you don't really take the time to prepare a well thought out message, that's what the reader is going to notice about you right off the bat. So just some additional tips, responding to emails. This is so important. When you receive an email from someone, I think it's always appropriate to obviously respond to that email. And I would suggest within 24 hours is considered proper etiquette. I know if somebody sends me an email and maybe I don't even have time to fully respond to their request, or they want me to look at a resume and I know I'm not going to get to it right away, I will respond to them, the student, and say, thank you for your email. I will get to this as soon as possible and reply to you as soon as I can. So sometimes it's just acknowledging that you even got it. You may not always have an answer, but I think it's just appropriate and it's just respectful to just respond to it, and hopefully within 24 hours as well. And then this kind of gets more towards an employer, but always targeting that email again with a name and a direct email. Sometimes if you're applying for positions or whatnot, you may be applying to like an employer's like service account or just kind of a general HR site. And so sometimes it's always good, if you can, to follow up with targeting an email to a specific person at that company if you want to follow up with a direct email on an application. And again, keeping it short and brief and to the point. I think I mentioned that earlier. Try not to use any abbreviations or anything like that. Just spell everything out. Take the time to write that in complete sentences. And I think that can still be done and still get your message across and to the point and be brief. I want to go back to that signature logo. I think it's important when you conclude your email and you type your name in there, especially for students. I'm very impressed when I get an email from a student and they've already kind of created a little brand and a little image for themselves. So go ahead and put again some information about yourself. Create that, what we call that signature at the end of your logo. So if you are involved in a student organization and you have some leadership position, go ahead and put your title in there. If you have certain credentials already, certain certifications, go ahead and include that next to your name. And again, go ahead and put your titles. If you have a LinkedIn address, and we'll talk briefly about that in just a moment, but I would go ahead and include that in your signature line, and a phone number. That way everything's just right there and it's in front of that reader. But again, I think that is just nice and professional overall. And I think as students, you can create that signature logo at the end of yours as well. Gosh, I kind of went through that kind of fast. I was trying to like, yeah, again, your email is setting the tone. You are branding yourself in your form of communication with your reader. I always think it's important to wrap up that email with a thank you. And I know when I'm responding to someone's email, I will typically start off with thanking them for their email. I think showing gratitude is just one of the, just something that's just a nice attribute to have. And so if a student is sending me an email, typically that first thing I say to that student, I'll reply, "Hi Karen, thank you for your email. Thank you for reaching out," whatever it is. And then I go into answering their question or getting to the content of the email. I want to pause here for just a moment and see if we have any other questions or any questions about emails.
Yeah, we have a question from a student that wants to know, what's the best way to address an email to my professor? And is it okay to use their first name?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's important when you're responding to or sending an email to an instructor is first of all to ask yourself already kind of how well do you know that instructor? Have they already kind of relayed to you how they like to be addressed? Have you previously received emails from them or in communication that you have received from them about your course? You know, usually you can tell from the end of their emails how they list their name. So if they list, you know, Dr. Rosie Shannon or Professor Shannon, then I would always kind of address them in the way that they have requested or the way that they have signed off before in an email. If you're really not sure, again, I would always err on the side of being a little too professional or too formal, maybe. But definitely, you know, use their name, try to look them up on the website, try to see how they're listed there on the website. What is their title? And I would go ahead and use their title, you know, again, because not all instructors have doctorate degrees, so they're not all doctors. But look at their titles, try to find their titles on the website or any other written materials that you have from that instructor. So, and again, I would just be cautious. You know, I think it's, I definitely want to use a name, you know, so again, but as far as a title or addressing any kind of putting a pronoun in front of it before and you're really not sure. So a lot of times, you know, I might just say, for me, if I were addressing someone, I would just say hello and their name. I typically steer away from pronouns when I'm addressing someone if I'm not, again, for sure 100% their preferred pronoun. So you just have to be cautious of that. So I would just kind of think back of how, again, what's the relationship you already have with them and how have they requested that you address them? Sometimes they mention that in class, oh, you can call me Rosie. So if that's the case, I would say, hi, Rosie, and then go into my email. But if you know that they prefer to be called Dr. Shannon or Professor Shannon, then I would definitely address them in that manner. So I hope that answers your question there.
Excellent. We have a few more here. Next question. I've been pretty active at U of L, so how many credentials should I list on my signature logo?
Oh, good question. Well, you know, gosh, I would, you know, definitely, I guess, go with maybe the ones that are, I don't want to say the most, that have the most weight or the most impressive. Again, I know you don't want it to be overly lengthy, but, you know, I would definitely list, have you had, I don't know if you can tell from that question, Mallory, if it's if they've had titles within those organizations, like you actually have titles to those, or they've just been involved in things. So
yeah, they didn't specify, but I think that's a good point that you bring up is, what roles do you have maybe there? And you might not want to list everything that you've done, like,
right.
a volunteer. So good
Yeah.
point, Rosie, there wasn't any specification, but feel free to reach out and specify if you have more specific questions on that. But I do think that was good advice.
Okay. Okay.
There's another question here. If you are emailing an employer about a position and you do not hear from the employer, how should you follow up?
That's good. Yeah, because you don't really want to hound that particular employer. If you have given them ample amount of time, you followed up with them once, which I think is perfectly fine and appropriate to have at least that one follow-up email. Maybe a second time would be appropriate, again, giving them, 7 to 10 business days. But, after that point, I think I wouldn't, again, I don't want to come across as hounding them. I want to be respectful of their time and that sort of thing. There could be other options. There could be other ways to maybe find the information that you're looking for if you have another contact or, but I think once and maybe at most twice is what I would do in terms of follow-up emails with someone. That's a good question. Because I know you want to show your interest and that sort of thing, but at the same time, you just have to be cautious in kind of seeming almost desperate or something like that.
There's definitely a fine line between being persistent and polished, but that's definitely great advice. Hopefully that answers your question out there. That is all the questions we have about emails. So if you want to roll on with the next topic.
Okay. So communicating via LinkedIn. I'm not sure if all of our attendees out there know or are very familiar with LinkedIn. I'm just going to mention it so all of this that I talk about will make more sense if you are familiar with LinkedIn, if you've used it, if you have a profile created. It is a wonderful, wonderful professional networking site that I strongly encourage everyone to familiarize yourself with. And actually, we are having a whole separate workshop on LinkedIn next Wednesday from 12 to 1. Miss Karen Boston, another staff member in the University Career Center, will be leading us on LinkedIn and creating a LinkedIn profile and just how to build your LinkedIn connections. But I just wanted to mention it here, just professional networking in general. But again, if you are reaching out to people on LinkedIn, you have a profile created, it is a way for you to connect with other professionals in your field. LinkedIn, in a brief summary, is just really your professional profile. It's your resume online, and it's all about your professional and academic and your career path. But it's a great way to connect with, again, professionals and do some networking and share best practices in your field. And so a lot of people are using LinkedIn, especially these days, because it's a way to find out about opportunities. You can look for jobs on LinkedIn, but mostly I use it just to connect with other professionals in my field and to share information and best practices, and maybe in the future to learn about opportunities that are out there. And again, if you are searching for a job in the future, LinkedIn is a great way to just network, to find out about open opportunities, somebody that could maybe, again, make you aware of an open opportunity. And if you've applied somewhere, they may be able to even help you, maybe give a recommendation or get your resume to the top of the stack. So there's lots of ways, again, to utilize LinkedIn, but I use it a lot to reach out to people on behalf of students to see if they would allow a student to maybe job shadow them or ask them information about their career path. And so that's what I strongly encourage students to utilize LinkedIn, mostly to find people that are out there in jobs that you are thinking about, in an industry or in a job that you would like to have someday, and then ask them about their career path and what advice would they give to somebody who wants to enter into the same field or industry. And so it's all about finding these personal connections with people that are out there doing work that you'd like to do, and again, getting their advice, tips, suggestions on how to enter that field. So there's a lot of communicating that is going on through LinkedIn. And so once you create a profile, you can ask others to connect with you and to join your network, so to speak. So this is just a few tips on communicating through LinkedIn when you're reaching out to a potential networking contact or a professional in your field. And there is a way in LinkedIn that you can request a connection with them and then also send them a message through LinkedIn. So if I'm reaching out to someone on LinkedIn on behalf of a student, I will look at their profile, and a lot of times in their profile, it'll have in their contact information how they like to be contacted. So a lot of times they may just list that LinkedIn URL, or they may give another email that they share with people. They may give a phone number. So always check that contact information first on someone's profile and really determine, is LinkedIn the best way to even reach out to them? Because I'd like to ask them some questions about their career path and opportunities in the field. And so obviously you can send a message in LinkedIn, but you can also just ask yourself first, is that the best way to reach out to that person? And if it is, then go ahead and send your message and craft it using the actual LinkedIn messenger that you can send, or going back to sending them an email if they list an email. Some people aren't as active on LinkedIn in terms of communicating with people. They like to be out there and they like to let people know what they're doing, and they like to look at the news feed, but they may not always, check it as often as they would check their emails, either a work email or a personal email. So just find out if that's the best way to connect. And then once you do reach out to someone, whether that is through the LinkedIn messenger feature or through, again, an email that you might send them, I would just find some common connection, a common ground that you might have with them. Again, maybe it is someone that is a graduate of U of L, so they're an alumni. So you have that U of L connection. You could say, I'm a student at the University of Louisville, and I noticed your profile on LinkedIn, and I'd like to ask you some questions about your career path and advice you might have to someone entering this field. Maybe it's somebody that had the same major as you. I noticed you are a communication studies major, and I am finishing my degree in that as well. And I'd like to ask you about, again, your career path and some advice about somebody entering this field. And again, it's LinkedIn is all about just making connections with people, and not so much that you're looking for a job or can I have a job, but you're just really requesting information in general about their career field, the path that they've taken, and again, any advice that they would give to someone who is thinking about entering that field as well. And obviously, again, it's just keep your message brief and always end the message with a thank you. So this is kind of very similar again to kind of that email, but just now again, this one does have that. I would just say, hi, Rosie Shannon, or hi, Rosie, and introduce yourself and how you kind of found the connection, and kind of again making that connection with them. Been following your blog for quite some time now, and this is something I have as well, and I'm interested in growing my team, and can you help give us some pointers and that sort of thing. And then obviously your name and then your signature line on there as well. And I believe also that in LinkedIn, when you send a message in LinkedIn, I believe the maximum there is 300 words when you send that message to a potential networking contact in LinkedIn. But again, we're going to go into more depth on LinkedIn next week. Again, all of these little topics here today could be like their own separate workshop, but Karen's going to go into more detail on crafting your profile and making a strong profile if you already have one created. A lot of times I ask students if they are familiar with LinkedIn, and they're like, yeah, I've created an account, but that's about it. You know, they don't really use it, or they don't really know how to best utilize it and all the different functions of LinkedIn, which is a wonderful tool. Any questions there about just that part of LinkedIn?
Yeah, I do want to include one that actually slipped by as we were transitioning about email, and then we have one.
Okay.
But the question is in regards to your advice on sending maybe a gentle reminder and follow up to an email. So specifically, the student is wondering for like a professor. Say they've emailed them, haven't heard back. Is it okay to send them a gentle reminder? And if so, how do you navigate that situation?
Yeah, that is a good question. And yes, I do think it's fine. Again, sometimes we just get inundated with emails, and sometimes we'll look at one and then we think, okay, I got to get back to the student, and sometimes things just slip through the cracks. So I do think it's fine to do that. I mean, I've had students who have followed up with me before because they've sent in my resume and I didn't quite get back to them as soon as I had hoped, and it's okay. But I think it is be mindful of how you craft that second message, to just say, I'm just, I appreciate the time, or I would probably just start off by just saying something like, I understand you're probably very busy. I did just want to follow up to see if you had a chance to read my previous email. And I'm submitting my, like for me, it'd be like, I'm submitting my resume again for you. If you don't mind taking a quick look at it. Thank you for your time. But yeah, so, you can just kind of acknowledge that, I understand you're probably really busy, and I just wanted to follow up with you to see if you've had a chance to read my previous email, or if you had a chance to see my note that I sent, and I would appreciate hearing from you. And that's really all the best you can do. But yes, it's fine to send that reminder, because sometimes it's needed. But again, maybe just kind of acknowledging that you are aware that they're busy, and you're just checking in to see if they had a chance to look at it.
Excellent.
Yeah,
and then the next question, is LinkedIn free?
Yes, for the basic, mine that I have created, I just have a basic account, and it is. I believe that there are other premium accounts that you can, if you wanted other certain features. I know that in LinkedIn, you ask people to connect with you, and you can have up to 3 levels of connections. So if we were to connect me with a student, we are first connections. And so then I can send a message to someone who is in my first connection, and all of that is free. But if you get into somebody, you find a contact on LinkedIn and you're not like connected with them at that first level, that first degree, then I believe there are ways that if you have an advanced, for lack of better words, advanced account set up with them, you get more features for like a premium an account. So, and Karen will probably address that in her topic next week. But yes, it is free, and that's a good question. But again, that's just for like a basic, to create a basic profile, which includes only certain, that you can only see like certain people's profiles, and the degree that you can see their profiles, and the degree that you can actually communicate with someone kind of does depend on which account you have. But I use mine. I don't pay a thing for mine, and I'm able to reach out to people and connect with people and send messages and do basic certain things that I need to do to do my job. So I'm pleased with that level of account that I currently have with them. Good question.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the LinkedIn, you can do so much with a free account. And really, as a student and a job seeker, that's all you need is that basic account. And the the trick is to keep growing your network, and the more people you'll be able to connect with. But great question. That's all that we have for LinkedIn specifically, Rosie.
Good. Yeah, because I do want to, we have just a little bit more to talk about social networking etiquette, and then I want to get into, obviously, the online interviewing. So, and I know that everybody, I feel that everybody, again, is pretty aware of the social networking etiquette, but it doesn't hurt to every now and then say these things again, especially in this day and age that we are in. And again, because everything goes back to reflecting your personality. And perception is reality. Again, you are constantly creating perceptions about your character that can affect your present status and your future aspirations. So again, just be sure that all content that's associated with you is consistent with your values. And so again, these are just some basic common, I think we were taught these things back in kindergarten, right? But the first rule of etiquette is just to be kind and courteous. Obviously, you know, just try to keep everything, anything that's on social media is positive, and obviously just trying to keep it all positive as you can. And when in doubt, don't put it out there. Don't post it. Never say anything negative, obviously, about any of your former co-workers, your boss, your company, your employer. So no negativity, keep it all as positive as you can. Because again, you never know sometimes what may end up being misinterpreted. You know, you can have the best of intentions sometimes, but sometimes people just, you know, take things the wrong way. So you just want to make sure that that everything is as positive as can be, and nothing will be interpreted in any way at all. And something I may have failed to mention, I think this is kind of standard, and a lot of people know this, but in any kind of post, and especially like in an email, it is recommended not to use that caps lock button that some people think that using all caps in any kind of communication makes it stand out and stresses some importance and that sort of thing. I think maybe there's an appropriate time and place to use all capital letters, but typically it's just recommended to not list things using that caps lock, because it can be difficult to read, and sometimes it just comes across as being a little bit loud and not very respectful. And again, just obviously use your discretion, and anything, again, that you put out there can be there forever. Obviously, again, you don't know whether things can be screenshotted, copied, saved, that sort of thing. Even though you think you've gone out and maybe you did post something and then you go back and you take it down, or you take it off, or you delete it. You know, again, who knows prior to that who saved it already, or shared it, or forwarded it, or anything like that. So once it's out there, it's basically out there. And so just always kind of keep that in the back of your mind as well. And always, again, protect your personal information. And I think, again, we're all kind of aware of that, and just your privacy. And, you know, again, sometimes posting things lets people know kind of where you are and what you're doing. And, you know, do you always want that out there for everybody to see and to read? Always, again, proofread anything that you put out there before you send it, to make sure that you are again, taking the time to go over those little details of spelling, grammar, punctuation, accuracy, those sorts of things. Again, because again, that sets the tone. If we don't pay attention to those details, might have an employer that says, you're too casual, or you act really quickly. Is that the type of skills that we're looking for in a potential candidate or in a person? So we just want to make sure that, again, that you've double checked things and that you proofread things and before you send that out. So again, those are just real basic, brief kind of, I know everything that's you hear every day probably from people, but again, employers will check all forms of your social media, especially if you are applying for a position. They will look you up on social media and see how you have displayed yourself on the internet. So they want to make sure that they are hiring somebody that is that can make good decisions, uses good judgment, presents themselves well professionally online and in a very positive light. So that's just kind of some real quick summaries of social media.
And it looks like we are all clear with questions on social media. So I'm guessing everyone here is following good online etiquette with their social media, right? We hope.
Good. So that moves us on to just this last area, which is the online interviewing, because again, as we know, even again before this quarantine, we were seeing a lot of employers using this online interviewing format. So, but obviously today, that's just the way it is right now in this job market. So, more and more employers are using Skype, GoToMeeting, WebEx, Zoom, Google Hangouts. There's so many out there. So I would encourage you to try to familiarize yourself and while you're in quarantine now to maybe, again, familiarize yourself with some of these different platforms. And always make sure that if you are contacted for an interview, make sure that you know which platform and technology they will be using, who will be attending, how long should you plan for the interview? I mean, just things that you would always prepare for anyway, like it is a face-to-face, in-person interview. So we just keep that in mind too, that you're still going to do everything you normally do as if it were an in-person interview. It's just now you have to make sure of these additional steps that the digital technology that might be being used. So everything from enhancing your sound quality, making sure, again, we're talking about this in a minute, your body language sends the right message, again, on that small screen. But again, there's a lot you can do to make sure that your digital presence is as professional and polished as your in-person persona. So some basic online interviewing tips. That first one, setting the stage. This is so important. Your backdrop in your space. Make sure that you are in a place that your backdrop is fairly plain. We want the employer to focus on you and to not be distracted by additional artwork in the backdrop or anything like that. So again, just make sure that your backdrop is fairly plain and that it's not distracting, and that the lighting is kind of soft, and that the lighting should be shining up towards you and not behind you. So just be aware of that. Obviously trying to make sure you have a good quality webcam, a microphone, maybe even that your headphones have a built-in microphone. But make sure again that your computer is eye level with you, so that you're not looking down into your camera. So whether you're using your laptop or maybe you're using a phone, just test it all out ahead of time and make sure again that you are looking straight into the webcam and that you're not looking somewhere else on your screen, but that hopefully when they see you, it's going to be eye level. And always mute your microphone when you're not speaking so that they don't hear any background noise. And so again, you want to make sure that you are in a spot that is quiet. And I know now that you're at home and maybe in quarantine, you might have other family members at home with you as well. So make sure that you are in a room that's fairly quiet and to yourself. And again, just make sure you mute that microphone when you're not speaking so they don't hear any dogs barking or other phones ringing or other children in the room or anything like that. And always allow time. Sometimes there can be a little pause in, you know, when you're speaking with somebody through video technology. Sometimes you need to give them a minute after they're done speaking, but before you start speaking. So always just kind of pause for a minute before you start speaking. And yeah, so that's just a few as far as setting the stage, your backdrop. As far as what to wear, again, you are, well, we'll get to dress the part, but certain colors too, like if you're wearing something white, sometimes that can be, it kind of has a glow to it or something, and maybe wear like a dark jacket over that. No loud patterns or flashiness or anything like loud plaids or anything. Just keep it, again, kind of conservative and professional, just like you would when you're in a person face-to-face interview, that it's very tailored, professional, and conservative, and just solid colors in general, things like that. When we said know your script and prepare your prompts, again, always making sure that, you know, you're taking with you to that virtual interview anything you would take with you to an in-person interview. So you've got a copy of the job description there with you. You've got a notepad of paper in front of you with some notes jotted down. You can take, you've got your questions prepared that you're going to ask them. You've got some key points and highlights, your strengths. You know which questions they're going to ask you, so you've got some answers all ready and prepared ahead of time. And so again, you've researched the company ahead of time too. So again, you're preparing for this interview just like you would an in-person interview. And but again, there are a little more challenges with it being a virtual interview. But again, keep your, again, computer screen so that it is setting on something sturdy, and that you are looking into the webcam and not down at your notes too. So, you know, just be aware if you use any kind of Post-it notes or anything like that, that you've got them around your space, but kind of still eye level with your camera, if that makes sense. And yeah, you've got your documents all prepared ahead of time, right there handy, right next to you. And you're prepared for that. And always rehearse. You know, if you know, again, you've got to make sure that you know which platform that they're using. If you can go in there and set it up, test it out, maybe with a friend of yours a day ahead of time, just to make sure that you're familiar with, again, that software. And then always check in. You know, if your interview is scheduled for 4 o'clock, again, just make sure that you're ready to go and log on there a good 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time. And, you know, again, we always risk that technology issues and problems, but I think if you can practice and rehearse ahead of time with that particular software, if you can, and then there's always other things like Interview Stream and some resources on our website that you can always practice an interview with beforehand, before you have the real live interview. And again, just make sure you know what type of, or who's going to be in that interview, if it's how many people will be there, and is that more of a conference style interview where they will be asking you questions and you'll be responding and that sort of thing. And then there's sometimes there's interviews where they send you ahead of time some pre-scripted questions, and then you are to record your answers and send them back to them. So again, just make sure that you fully understand what type of interview that it's going to be. Again, going back to dress the part, that's just like you would in a live face-to-face interview. So Wear your best, wear your professional outfit from head to toe. Again, you're going to be more confident in what you're wearing, and you just never know if you have to stand up for some reason, and you just want to make sure that, again, that you are dressed head to toe for this interview, just like you were in an in-person interview. And then the body language, again, this is so important in this virtual video type of interview that you will probably be having. You know, you don't want to be real up close and too close to your computer screen, but you know, I think it's nice maybe at first to just kind of lean forward and give a slight nod and smile as the employer introduces themselves, but be mindful of all of the motions that you're making as well. You don't want to be too fidgety and using a lot of gestures with your hands and things like that. And just again, keep your eyes on the camera. And body posture is nice and attentive and alert, and you know, so it is a good idea if you can practice that ahead of time. And I know with Interview Stream you can actually record your interview and watch it, and so you can see yourself in action and on camera. So that concludes that interview, the online interviewing. So I'm sure we probably have some questions about that as we end our hour. Okay.
We do. We have a few, so we've got a few minutes left. Before we switch gears there, as we were moving to the next topic, there were a few questions about social networking. So I just want to combine these questions for you. So the question was kind of, is it okay for me to send a request to my professors, instructors through social media? And then, you know, is that good etiquette? And then also, what would you do if someone, say a professor, requests to be a friend, but your profile is not geared towards a professional side? Should you accept it? And so how do you navigate the professional and the personal?
Nice. Well, as far as connecting with instructors, I would definitely do that on LinkedIn, and I would make sure and maybe meet with your career coach first and let us go over that LinkedIn profile with you to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is nice and strong and professional and has everything on it that displays your strengths. So definitely I would connect with them on LinkedIn. Social media, I am a little cautious on social media and connecting with instructors. So when you say social media, I didn't immediately go to like Facebook and Instagram and all of that, but I'm thinking, okay, LinkedIn, yes, that's great. That's the professional networking that I would focus on, especially with my instructors. The personal, I would probably not do that while I'm currently a student of theirs enrolled in a class. Now, unless I would wait until I have graduated and have completed my degree and I'm no longer their student. That's just my personal opinion. I've taught before and I typically am not. I don't know. I keep that separate from the classroom, that personal connection there. I would gladly again connect with someone professionally through LinkedIn, but I think on a personal level with the other forms of social media, I would probably wait until I am not a student or an instructor of theirs to connect with them. But regardless, I would always, take the time now to look through all of your social media platforms and clean up your profiles and, just take down things that you feel aren't quite appropriate anymore if you feel that way. That's just my personal recommendation on connecting with instructors through social media.
Absolutely. I think it is a good idea to keep all of that professional contacts in the LinkedIn space is really what it's there for. A great question about virtual interviewing here. So, what kind of body language should we use in place of a handshake? So can you explain how you might want to, instead of, you can't give a handshake, but how do you make that first strong impression in place of that?
That's a good. I think just a nice little, head nod, definitely a smile, try to just smile and be yourself. I know sometimes when I'm connecting, like we have staff meetings or things like that, I just kind of give a nice little smile and a nice little wave. I just kind of put my hand up and that's just kind of my greeting to someone, is just, hello, how are you doing? Good to see you today. And again, just that nice smile, and using again your voice and being very cheerful and pleasant. But I think just even if you want to just give them a nice little hands up sort of greeting, that's fine and that's appropriate. It is hard. It's hard, because you aren't there in person and able to do that. But I just think a nice little wave and a hands up is appropriate.
And last question that we have here is also about interviewing. So my on-site job interview was switched to a Skype interview. And while I don't mind doing a virtual interview, I was hoping that the in-person interview would allow me to have a tour of the company and give some insight to the culture. Is there anything I can do to still have that experience or get that information?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. And yes, there are several things that you can request since you aren't there to visit the site in person. You could ask that potential employer if they could possibly give you any kind of video tour of the facility. You may also want to reach out if you know of others in that department that maybe you could reach out to and ask them to give you a little tour of their space of where they work. And you can obviously go to that employer's social media pages, their LinkedIn page, obviously their social media sites as well, and check out as far as getting information from them. You can kind of see what the culture is like through their social media sites. A lot of them have company LinkedIn pages, as well as their Facebook pages and other, again, social media sites that you can get on to see, again, to just kind of get a better feel for the culture and what's happening there and how people are interacting and what all that they're doing in the community. Glassdoor is another resource that you can look into and research employers' ratings and comments from people who have interviewed there or have some associations with that company. They've given some ratings and reviews and comments about that particular company. So Glassdoor.com is another good resource that gives information about employers and feedback from people that have had some interactions with them. But definitely you could ask for a video tour of the facility, and that's something that would certainly be acceptable to ask. And if possible, yeah, if there are any other staff members that would be willing, that you could speak with about and ask them questions just about the culture there and the climate there, and also see maybe even a video of their space as well.
Whoops, sorry about that. Let's see here. So those are all the questions that we have, but we did have a comment. The student has an upcoming interview and has found this all to be very helpful and is very thankful for today's session. So thank you all for questions. A great session.
Good, yes, and these are just some additional sources, some of the information that helped us prepare today. And again, we just want to encourage all of our participants and attendees today to stay connected with us. We are meeting with students virtually, and you can schedule appointments with any of the career coaches through your Handshake account, and also to visit our website, obviously, for additional resources on there. And feel free to reach out to myself or, again, schedule an appointment with your career coach through your Handshake account. And don't forget our next virtual workshop, which will be next Wednesday, 12 to 1 on LinkedIn. And again, that whole hour will be spent on that LinkedIn profile and all the different bells and whistles of LinkedIn. And thank you for attending, and thank you, Mallory, for your help.
Thanks, Rosie. Hope everyone has a great day, and we will see you next week.
All right.
I didn't